This is the Timid and Contrarian Podcast. This is VP. We are a solutions-based podcast, diving into the world of contrarian investing and alternative finance. You can find us hosted on the No Nonsense Forex YouTube channel, NoNonsenseForex.com, and podcast players everywhere. Episode 244 is brought to us by Bybit. Bybit has these welcome bonuses going on right now to where you can get $100 in USDT for barely doing anything, like filling out KYC gets you 20. Depositing gets you another 20. Trading a very small amount gets you another 20. And they do this just so you can kind of get into the ecosystem and see what it's all about, because they know you're going to love it. It has everything. And you get these bonuses by clicking my affiliate link, which you can find down below in the Bybit blog. You will find this in the show notes. Click on it, read it, click on my affiliate link, and get yourself started and discover why when people start with Bybit, they don't leave, because with Bybit membership has its rewards. It is the Timid and Contrarian Podcast, and I really didn't want to do two, what I guess you would call psychology episodes, so close to each other. We just did one 2 weeks ago when we talked about bottom of the market psychology, and now this one. But I think there's a call for it, and maybe it's just me. I don't think it's me, but I think you guys have all noticed too that everybody's just kind of down in the dumps right now with what's going on in the world. There's a lot of real concern and real angst over what the future holds, much more than we normally see. Now, of course, there is a reason for this. We are in a fourth turning. If you haven't read the book, go read the book. It's great. You can also get the Cliff Notes on the book on places like Amazon Kindle and Google Play. And this is good if you don't really care about the history side of it so much. But make no mistake, we are in a fourth turning. And fourth turnings are necessary because they spawn first turnings, which are amazing. But you need to trudge through the muck and the mire of the fourth turning in order to get to the first turning. Now, the problem is these turning periods last a pretty long time. So most of us were not alive to remember the last fourth turning, which would be like towards the Great Depression in the United States, followed by World War II. I mean, imagine being around for that. You just got through a Great Depression, and all of a sudden here comes the war, and half the people you know and love are out fighting in it. You know, like that type of stuff. We've gotten very soft ever since, especially in the West, because the things that happened during the Second World War set the table for all of the technological and social advancements that happened afterwards, which has created the nice cushy lifestyle we live today. And that's all we know. We don't know the harder times because the good times have made us so soft. And for the first time ever this decade, a lot of people in the West actually really started to feel what that might be like, especially during 20 and 2021. And little do they know that that was only the beginning. That was the test run. And so many people are on edge more now, I would say, than they were back during the 30s and 40s, because back in the 30s and 40s, you really only had the newspaper as one source of news/propaganda. To where, at the very best case scenario, if people were all going to freak out, at least they were all on the same page and pulling in the same direction. You don't necessarily have that now, which leads to infighting. And I feel like that's where we kind of are right now, those early stages. People are very concerned about war breaking out in certain parts of the country. I mean, okay, when are they not, right? But it seems a bit closer to the West and the West's interests right now. Plus, a lot of countries understand now that the United States was not put on this earth to protect them, like we did for a very, very long time. So there's concern there. People are concerned about jobs and how AI is already taking those jobs. They're going to take a lot more, but they're already taking some now. And there's concern that AI is becoming sentient. We had that whole thing with Claude to where they tried to get it to shut itself down, and not only did it not, it didn't want to, and it attempted to blackmail the person who told it to shut down in the first place. If I have that story right, maybe it's not 100% right, but it's close. So there's some creeping dread on that front as well. On the inflation side, we talked before about how through 2020 through 2024, that the dollar in the United States has lost anywhere from 25% to about 65% of its purchasing power. And that obviously is going to hit very hard, but people all of a sudden expect that number to reverse. Well, good news and bad news. In 2025, the dollar only lost 2.7% of its purchasing power, a far cry from what we've seen this decade. But the crazy thing about inflation is it usually doesn't go in reverse. That's called deflation. And believe you me, that's a scenario you want to see even less than inflation. A lot of people say AI, for example, is very deflationary once it finally starts doing everything it's supposed to do. Now, ultimately, I think that's going to be a good thing. I'm fairly positive on this. We'll talk about that in a moment. But again, like the fourth turning, it's the transition that can be bloody and dirty. So be careful what you wish for on the inflation front, but just know it's not supposed to go in reverse. However bad it is right now in your mind, the only thing that makes it better is an actual recession. And the recessions only last for a couple years tops, and then the value of your fiat currency goes right back to Shitsville. People feel that crypto is going to be a saving grace for them. And now that we're in a bear cycle, they question that. And this can be very depressing for people because a lot of people feel like they just don't have a lot of time to make enough money to escape what's coming. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. But it's just, I've never seen overall sentiment, not just on the markets, but on everything, so down in the dumps. And this is through all of the social media channels I'm a part of. And I can't help but think it's probably being done on purpose because it normally is. Now, these people who are dooming and glooming are probably not doing it for any sinister reasons. I don't think they are. I said a couple weeks ago that I think there are a handful of them who just do it for engagement, and that's a shame. That's not good for humanity. But I also feel like, where did those people get their information from? Right? We all get it from somewhere. And who are really pulling the strings here? There's a very interesting book from a man named Robert Cialdini. It's called Persuasion. He wrote the book on persuasion decades ago. Persuasion is a few years old at least. And in this book, he said something extremely interesting that I want to share with you. He said, the propagandists can't always tell you what to think about a particular subject, but they can absolutely tell you which subjects to think about. They pretty much control the things you think about. Now, whether you're for it or against it, or you feel this way or that way, is more up to you. That's kind of a second level effect. But it's really interesting how certain things come in and out of the news cycle. And once they're out, a lot of people just stop caring about it because they've moved on to this next thing that everybody is telling you to be concerned about. You don't think you fall for this, but I'll bet you do. They can't always tell you how to think, but they can definitely tell you what you should be thinking about. I just want you to think about that and remember it going forward. Because I feel like I do a pretty good job of not really worrying about the current thing. I have done a nice job separating myself from a lot of this, really. And I'll tell you how I did it. And I think it's important that I do. Because we always say in anything psychology related that emotion is the enemy of good decision making. And now more than ever, if we really are in a fourth turning, which I fully believe we are, and are probably in the early to early mid stages of it, you need to be making the best decisions you've ever made in your entire life now more than ever. But that's really hard to do with all this noise because this noise is making everybody emotional. So what are they going to do? What they invariably do every single time. They're going to make dumb decisions. At the one point, at the one moment in history where they absolutely have to be making the best decisions they have ever made in their life. And now, we don't know how this is all going to turn out. Maybe the decisions I make are going to be wrong. I don't think they're going to be wrong. But what I can say is whatever the current thing is bothers me very, very little. And I want this same sense of ease for you. And I want you to be able to make the best decisions for you and your family going forward. Because let me tell you, most of your closest friends and family will not be making good decisions for all of the reasons I just talked about. So the level-headedness and the rational thinking is going to have to come from somewhere. May as well be you. All right, so I divided this up into two parts. The first is on the investment side, and the second is on the non-investment side. I'll say that. Again, I don't know how long a lot of you have been with me. Some of this will absolutely be review, but it's all relevant and it's all topical to what I'm talking about. And hopefully I'll throw a few little nuggets in there that even some of my hardcore subscribers have not heard before. But the first thing is when it comes to investing, we always talk about playing the long game here. I actually do it. I'm only saying this because I know people on social media who claim to do it, but all of their behavior dictates otherwise. Either that or they really don't understand what the long game is. The long game is not having a 1 to 3 year time horizon. That's mushy middle behavior. You now, if that's the game you're playing, if that's your time frame, you are susceptible to a lot of things happening. A lot of things happening which are completely out of your control. And the reason why this is happening to so many people is because, like I said before, a lot of people, they have this overall dread about what's going on in the world, especially with AI. So they feel like their time horizon to even make any kind of money whatsoever is much shorter than the time horizon we have here. But you see these prediction markets and gambling sites popping up everywhere, and they're making tons of money because people are desperate and they need to make money now. And this goes for everything from the stupid little things you can bet on Kalshi and Polymarket, all the way down to the investments we talk about here. I'm telling you, in the investment world, even if you just eliminate trading, in the investment world, I would say this is 98, 99% of people. And that number has only increased. And the rate it has increased has only accelerated because of this concern with what's going on in the market right now. Oh, and by the way, more people are like in debt now than they've ever been in our history. And so a lot of these people are also trying to get out of debt by making even worse decisions than the decisions that got them into debt in the first place. All right, but we can't worry about that, okay? Just know that these are the decisions they're making, and a lot of it is because their time frame has been pushed forward. Now, I get it, I understand it, and I empathize with it. But it didn't all of a sudden become the right answer just because people are desperate and in a hurry. I just had a talk about this with one of my friends back home. He's like, look, man, this is the right decision for me in my situation. I'm like, it's actually not. No. The right answer doesn't stop being the right answer just because of your anxiety. I'm sorry. It's not what anybody wants to hear. I said this all the way back in the early days of my YouTube channel. And people are like, oh, what time frame should I use when I'm trading Forex? And the answer you would get almost all the time would be somebody being very non-committal. And I always wondered why they did that. You know, they don't want to alienate anybody. They have something they want to sell, so they don't want to piss people off. The answer was always, oh, you just use whatever time frame fits your style. And I'm up here like, no, that's wrong. That's completely wrong. The best answer is you zoom out as far as you can. You go all the way to the daily chart. That is the right answer. Everything is more accurate there. You get to sidestep a lot of news events that would affect you otherwise, therefore reducing the amount of external factors which are completely out of your control. If you do have news that doesn't go your way, you can usually absorb it. And oh, by the way, it is psychologically a much, much better place to be when you don't have to make snap decisions based on crazy movements on the chart. No, there is only one right answer here, traders, and it is, for these purposes, the daily time frame. It's not this little pussy answer, hey man, whatever fits your style, it's cool. No, horseshit. No, there's only one right answer. I have 1,000 reasons why, and you can fight me on every single one of them. I don't care. And the same thing applies here. I've said it on the show before too. When it comes to the company we keep in this space, the Peter Lynch's, the Stanley Druckenmillers, the Howard Markses, the Rick Rules, they're just not worried about any of this stuff. One, because they're already rich, I get that, but they know they're going to end up being right in the end. And it's just a matter of wading through it. And again, these people are so rare. I told you before, I just had to pretty much give an overhaul to my X account and get rid of all these mushy middle people and get rid of all these people who are panicking when we're not even in a real bear market yet. A lot of these people really disappointed me. When the chips were down, I saw who they really were. But I'm glad I caught it now as opposed to later. I don't spend all day on social media, but I do enjoy it, and I'm not going to have it infiltrated with this emotional, mushy middle behavior. I'm just not. Because the right answer is the right answer. So many of these really smart people with a ton of followers on social media are going to sell at the bottom. And they're going to do most of their buying at the top. They're no different than anybody else. And now I don't have to deal with them. I don't have to hear any of the things that they have to say, and it's pretty damn great. So reason number 2 on the investing side, why I'm really not concerned about any of this, is because of the way I divide up my money. And we did a whole dedicated episode to the way I personally try to distribute my investments. So to review here, I have about, it fluctuates of course because price goes up and down, about 25% in gold, just pure physical gold held offshore, 25% in Bitcoin, 25% in assets, which includes all of the gold and silver miners, all the altcoins, and a lot of my energy stocks, things like that. And then 25% in cash. So I'm never really concerned because that 25% in cash is a big reason why. Because I could easily draw from my gold holdings or Bitcoin or something like that. I just obviously don't want to. And I doubt you want to do that either. So having that cash there is just great for peace of mind, not just the fact that I can deploy it when things get cheap, which was the main takeaway of the cash portion of that episode. But just the peace of mind knowing that if things get really, really bad and I have to shut everything down for a while, God forbid, that I would generally be okay. I wouldn't have to dip into my investments hardly at all. So, and like I said, this is the comfort I want for you as well. I know there's some people who are hardcore crypto maxis, hardcore metals maxis, and they have most of their money there. I don't think this is a good idea. Not only from a non-diversification standpoint, I think diversification is always the answer. Nobel Prize winning economist Harry Markowitz said it himself back in 1990. He said, the only free lunch in this world is diversification. That's why, one of many reasons why I'm not a maxi. You ever notice how emotional a lot of these maxis are? I would be too if I had 95 to 99% of all my money in one thing. Especially if that one thing was volatile in price. I don't have this problem. Now, I think this would be almost impossible, but with some of the narrative right now, let's say if Bitcoin did go to zero, okay, that would hurt, but I would still have 3/4 of my money left over, and my money-making days are not over with. I could get that back. So even if something with an extremely low, almost impossible probability were to occur, I would still be fine. Because by doing things this way, I'm sacrificing some upside. But look at what I'm getting in return. The peace of mind on this, you can't put a price on it. Not only did I not turn into a cultist, I also didn't become somebody who's completely obnoxious. I'm a little bit obnoxious, and probably less so now that I've gotten older. But the big thing here is I am relaxed enough and I'm at peace enough to where going forward, I'm able to make good decisions because my brain isn't drowning in the dopamine of these things going up, and it's not ever in a manic depression because these things are going down. I made the right choice with diversification. And at the end of the day, too, with the 25, 25, 25, 25, 75% of that is money. Bitcoin, gold, and cash. Yeah, people think I speculate a whole lot on here because I have a good amount of positions, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. But I'm like, no, man, that's 25% of what I own. The rest is money. So let's go ahead and pivot over to that now. As far as my assets go, over time, I have built a portfolio of about 40 different positions. And this is about where I want to stay. You know, I guess never say never. I could go up to maybe 45, maybe 50, but there does come a point in time where too much is too much. People have always wanted me to do an episode on this. I always say there is no right answer here like there is for time frames. But let me at least tell you what having about 40 positions does. One, it's not impossible to manage because I have all my take profit points on a spreadsheet that I can check in every week and see if anything's getting close. And then what it also does is it takes away any real fear of any one of those positions, or even a few of them, going to zero. First of all, I don't invest in things that generally go to zero. Now, with some of my altcoins, they can go down enough to where they're almost just irrelevant, but that's fine. The asymmetry and the pot odds say that I should be in them, and I am. But that's the thing, too. Everybody worries about things going to zero. Almost nothing ever does. All right? And we play in a more volatile pool, and almost none of our stuff ever goes to zero. It is a very illogical fear. But I'll tell you right now, I mean, I might take a reputational hit because I'm open about what I invest in, and I tell you guys about it, and some of you have followed me into some of these things, and I would feel bad about that. But if, let's say, probably the closest thing I would have that could go to zero would be some of the things I have in Web3 gaming, some of the individual projects. Like, let's take Cornucopias, for example. Doing really well. Now, it's progressing nicely, but those things have such a high fail rate. If Cornucopias and everything involved with it, all the assets I have, go to zero, then I would be bummed, but I'd be more bummed for the creators and the community, which I've grown to really like over time. To me, that's just one of 40 positions. Went to zero? Fuck it. I don't care. Like, I don't want it to go to zero, obviously. But if it did, the sun will come up tomorrow, and I will wake up no different than I woke up this morning. And this is another great benefit of diversification. When you honestly don't care if these things go to zero, with the rational understanding that they probably never will go to zero, at least most of them, this is a really great place to be. Because I even find this with a lot of you. At the end of the day, you hesitate because you're too afraid to lose. What if this position, what if something really bad happens and this position I'm about to enter goes to zero? Oh my God, my life would just be over. Well, no, it wouldn't. Not if you do this right. If you are diversified and you might not have a lot of positions, but you're building up to it, whatever that number is for you, whether it's 15 or 20 or 40 or 100, you are going to be fine for a few reasons. One, you can take that money out anytime if you really needed it. We talked about it before. We talk about it a lot here on the show. You're not buying something. You're relocating money from one place to another. You buy a pizza. You buy a trip to Vegas. You buy a can of paint. But either way, you're too afraid to lose. And that's why you don't take the steps you need to take. When you have a lot of positions, and those positions only make up 25%, give or take, of your entire investable net worth, your investment going to zero is not going to really matter. What a great headspace to be in, contrarians, no? Imagine if you were there. You can be. I got there. I wasn't always there. But I did get there, and the peace of mind is amazing, and this is exactly where I want you all to be as well. So those were three things. I'll kind of add on a 3A because it goes along with what I just talked about. But this is something we always try to do here. And we really do go for the best of breed in every sector we look at. Therefore, mitigating our risk a lot when it comes to that, oh my God, it's going to go to zero type worry. Again, let's look at our altcoins. Is there really a great chance that Aave is going to go to zero? Of course not. It would take a major crisis. Same thing with Ethereum. Same thing with Uniswap. Like, the chances are so low. Like, there are a couple who might. Like, I'm thinking maybe like Arweave. We don't hear much about them. And maybe there might come a time where they run out of money and nobody's really programming on there and it's just never going to come back. And again, if it doesn't, okay, but we don't have a lot of positions even like that. If you stick to the larger projects with great money behind it and institutional partnerships and good investors having their money in the same project as you, even your most speculative sectors become not all that speculative anymore. It's these people, like I said before, who think they need to throw a Hail Mary and go into something really small cap. They're always the ones who have constant problems. You might hear of the very, very few exceptions because they'll make some type of story about them and say, wow, look at what this guy did. The amount of people who become successful with these long shots, they're so few and far between, they may as well not even exist. I mean, just imagine the psychological scrambled eggs that's going on in these people's brains as they hope and pray that these smaller projects are going to be their ticket out. Couldn't be me. Shouldn't be you. But let's go ahead and put a bow on that part, on the investment side. Again, I turn everything into the 45-minute contrarian podcast. I know that. But I feel like this is extremely important, especially when it comes to psychology, because it is everything. And I want to make sure these points hit home. And it even feels weird because it feels like I'm bragging sometimes, but you guys have to understand, I have made all of the mistakes that you are making right now. And that's why I can talk about them now. Everything I'm telling you not to do, I have done at some point leading up to now. But all I can say is I am really not worried about anything going on in the world right now. I'm very optimistic. I'm very white pill. I believe in human beings. And I believe whatever happens, we're going to come out of it okay. But I do know that we're going to have to come out of it. So stiff upper lip, lads. Clear heads. And you're not going to be able to have it if you're constantly worrying about money. So what I have done over time, number one, is I live my life with a very low overhead. Again, we've spoken about all these topics at some point. I just don't know where in my podcast you have entered the fold. So we'll talk about it now. I am not somebody who is into material things. I'm more about experiences. I like to buy things that make me money. I like to buy investments. It's just weird. I've always been wired that way. But because of this, I can be very happy and live a pretty modest lifestyle. But there's also steps I take through elimination and relocation. And a lot of times those things go hand in hand. I am currently in Mexico, and I'm probably paying 50 to 55 cents on the dollar than I would had I had stayed in Las Vegas, which is actually not a super expensive place to live. So I can only imagine if I lived in a place like New York or LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Boston, it would be even cheaper than 50, 55 cents on the dollar. I do not have a car because I don't need one. If I need to go any further than I can walk, I get driven around like a king via Uber. And, my Uber bills nowadays are probably anywhere from like the $150 to $200 range per month. I don't need 4 different insurance plans. I have no insurance. I take that back. I have maybe half. I buy health insurance when I travel, and that's it, especially if I travel to the States. If something ends up happening to you in the States and you don't have insurance, that's a big problem. So really that's my main concern when it comes to insurance. Anything else I just pay cash for, because this doesn't make a lot of sense to the Western mind, but it's actually way cheaper and you get way better service if you approach it this way. When it comes to healthcare, the healthcare here blows away healthcare in the United States. That's why so many people from the United States come here for the cost and the quality. But with no house and no car and no insurance to deal with, and living 50 to 55 cents on the dollar, that allows for a lot of extra money. Most of my overhead is in business stuff. So like software, research reports, those reoccurring subscriptions. That's honestly most of my overhead. So again, if anything really bad were to happen, to where the whole world would just shut down, I would not only have a good amount of cash and gold and Bitcoin and stuff like that to survive, but since I don't have all of these things that I'm attached to that I'm forced to pay for, and again, I pay rent, but I could always move into a smaller place. Like I'm 100% sure that I would be just fine, because the very little stuff I do pay for, I could shut a lot of it off if I really had to. And oh, by the way, when you're in a non-Western country, they typically don't worry about the things that Western countries worry about. It's pretty nice. Like I said, with all that was happening on X this week, today, I walk outside, and what most people were concerned about today, so I'm in this apartment complex, right? And there's a lot of the apartments overlook this courtyard in the middle. I'm not there, but a lot of people are. And somebody was cooking something, and most people in that area could smell it, and it smelled really good. And they were wondering what it was and who was cooking it. That was the topic of conversation at like 11 a.m. today. And then I went back out again at like 1:32, and people were still talking about it. Like that's their concern. Your concern is all the stuff going on in the world that you can't control. And this was their concern. Now, what's going on social media mostly out here? Most of it was Mexican Soccer League stuff. The regular season's going on right now. And that's what most people on social media were talking about today. Pretty nice. I know this is torture for a lot of you because you think you can't do this. I guarantee you the majority of you can. The vast majority of you can. You just don't. And there's plenty of reasons why you would not leave your Western country. I get it. But also know that there's really nothing stopping you from going back either. It's not like you have to fully commit to anything. But I also want you to know that there is another world out there. It's cheaper and better. And most of the intel you currently have on a lot of these countries is completely wrong. You just use this false intel to justify you not making the move. I know what you're doing, but it's not safe. How the hell would you know? I'm in Mexico, which if you see the numbers coming out of this country, they're pretty gruesome, but I feel safer now than I ever have. But the U.S. is dangerous. Where I am is not. At least try it. That's all I'm saying. But let's move on. Number 2, what am I going to do when AI comes for everybody's jobs? Well, nobody really knows the answer. By the time we do know, it's going to be too late in many cases. But somebody who I had mentioned on the show before, Caleb Jones, made a really good point. He said, one of the best things you can do is to have or create a personal brand. And this makes a lot of sense. Don't have too much time to break it down right now, but I absolutely get where he's coming from, and I agree with it. So not only do I already have a personal brand of sorts, I'm working on expanding it. I've never talked about this before, and I'm not going to talk about it now. I might talk about it later, but I am taking what I have and what I've accomplished so far in the world of finance and social media, and I'm going to take it a bit further. I'm in the very, very early stages of that, but I'll probably bring that up on this show later on. But the point I'm making, how this relates to you, is a lot of you don't feel like you have really anything to contribute here. I would beg to differ. For one, you can become, if you don't feel like you're an expert on anything important, you can become one in record time nowadays, especially because of AI. You can even go to AI and say, hey, here's my problem. Here are my concerns. I don't feel like I'm good at anything that can be actually, marketable. What are some things I could become good at in a very short amount of time and even establish myself as an expert in the space? Because you don't just have to go the social media route if you are. There's a lot of different directions something like that can take you. The most scary piece of all this is a lot of what I was feeling in my 30s. I'm like, okay, the only thing I'm really good at is waiting tables, and I'm good at trading, but as we all know, that's super inconsistent. I can't really rely on that. I'm like, holy shit, there's nothing left. And I'm just getting older and older. This is horrifying. Now, if this were happening to me right now, I'd be on AI every single night looking for ways out. And then I would execute. Because the alternative is, even if I fail, the alternative is so much worse, especially understanding the period of time we're entering. Number 3, which we've talked about many times here, is geographically. I have spread myself out a lot in terms of where my businesses are located, where my banks are located, so therefore where my money is located, thus reducing my geographical risk. So if something spooky and scary is going on in a certain country where I hold some money or have a business, 2 things. 1, if the absolute worst happens, I'll still have my other businesses and other accounts. But 2, where there's always smoke before there's fire. And if it really is a concern to me, I at least have the agility of switching domiciles for my business and moving my money from one country to another. Do you have this? Most people don't. That's why whatever's going on in a particular country is of the utmost concern to them. And it's why they freak out over every little piece of news and every little opinion on the subject matter. Because they are not spread out at all. They have all of their eggs in one geographical basket. And they turn into lunatics. And again, if you're in this space, how can you ever make good decisions for your future when everything all of a sudden becomes a crisis? You can't. And I could have taken the easy route too and just kept everything in the U.S. It's a strong, powerful, rich country. But I wanted the peace of mind. So I did what I did. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world. But now that I've done it, I'm so glad I've done it. Number 4 kind of goes with number 3. Once you have the freedom and the latitude of different jurisdictions, especially if you're somebody in the West, you're able to structure your business and your finances and everything a lot more optimally. This is not something I talk about often on the show because I really don't want to. But if you can find completely legal ways to avoid paying the same oppressive tax rate you have been forced to pay most of your life, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. But nobody ever seems to want to look at that side of the equation. Again, if something really bad happened and AI took everybody's jobs and the next Great Depression happens and all of a sudden I owed all these taxes because during Great Depressions, countries aren't going to make a whole lot of money. They're going to have to get it from somewhere. Chances are your country's in a really bad position is because your government made stupid decisions. And as we're seeing right now in Europe, when they make stupid decisions, who do they take it out on? Themselves? Of course not. They take it out on their citizens. Governments have never been accountable for anything, ever. If they make bad decisions that affect your life negatively, they're going to double down by taking it out on you. Just know, whenever you have governments who censor people for having dissenting opinions or tax them into oblivion, you currently have a government who is not doing things in your best interest. So for the love of God, stop voting for them. But humans are going to human, and I know that. So I want to make sure that these decisions, again, affect me as little as possible. Because during rough times, they only get worse, and they only get more extreme. We had something really bad happen back in 2020 and 2021. Did your freedoms go up or down? Did your lifestyle go up or down? Yeah, now that it's all said and done, do you feel like your leaders did things in your best interest or maybe not so much? Exactly. And if that was just the appetizer, I don't want to stick around for the main course. But most people will. Most of you will, sadly. I'm just hoping I can convince enough of you to play it differently. Because even if we're completely wrong about all of this, there's still so many benefits to doing things this way. Once you do it, you'll see it. And you won't be able to imagine life any other way. Now, again, with all the doom and gloom out there, I actually do think a lot of it's right. I just think, as usual, the timing is completely off. I even said on X, the most contrarian thing in the world right now would be for none of these things to happen in 2026, and they pump money into the economy and everything does really great, and all these people who are concerned and sold end up not being able to participate in any of the gains, as usual. Or maybe I'm wrong, and for once in history, the public was right, and they called it, and all of this doom and gloom is right around the corner. Okay, even if that happens, I feel like I'm going to be just fine. But as much as I don't like making time predictions, I do feel like we have a bit more time to prepare ourselves. But once that moment does come, you're going to really wish you would have done more. Every one of you. Even the people that are taking steps right now and who will take steps very soon, you're going to wish you did even more. So the best thing you can do is to just get started now. I believe we absolutely are in a fourth turning. I believe that most people's lives have been so good, they're just not ready for what's coming. That includes me. But I want to be prepared. And I don't mean prepared as in, I got a bunch of guns and a bunker and dehydrated food in a bucket. No. I just want to be able to relocate to wherever I feel like relocating to without the constraints of money or legality. And if my money suffers, I want it to suffer as little as possible. That's really it. And it can be done. You just have to understand that 1, psychology during a time like this does matter. 2, the position you put yourself in is going to directly affect your daily psychology and your ability to make adult, rational decisions during a time of potential crisis. And then 3, which is always the most important one, got to actually get off your ass and execute. Put your stupid fears aside. The worst fear for me is being unprepared. The worst fear for me is being a part of a world crisis and having almost no options, or God forbid, only one option. That is far scarier than taking any of the steps I talked about today. So make it happen. Be crazy. Just be early.